Hello once again, all you garden lovers out there, those that follow us here on Garden America. Happy weekend, happy Memorial Day weekend. If you work, maybe you've got a 3-day weekend coming up. We trust you had a good week, and the weekend's even better to you. First of all, thank you for joining us, making Garden America part of your weekend. I'm Brian Main. John Bagnasco is here, a little confused, but he's here. Tiger Palafox also here, going to keep the ship floating, as they say. In the meantime, we do have a guest lined up today, somebody that you're very familiar with, or should be after all these years. But right now, I'm going to talk to John Bagnasco because, John, I'm a little concerned about you this morning. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah.
You remember the first Memorial Day, right? Do you remember why?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, actually, you shouldn't.
That's like you remember the first Christmas,
yeah,
right?
right. The very first. Well, I read about it.
Yeah.
How about that? I read about it.
Do you know why Memorial Day was created?
Oh boy, here we go. I mean, there seems to be the obvious answer, but I'm going to let you fill us in on some history.
Just because you don't want to look foolish, right?
Well, that too. That always plays into it. I mean, I could give you a smart aleck
No,
answer.
I think it was first started to honor the Union soldiers that fought during the Civil War.
Oh, the Civil War.
Yeah. A lot of times people think it's either one of the world
Right.
wars, World War I or World War II, but it just went on from Civil War times.
And then I asked you before the show this morning, it used to be called something else. My dad would refer to this day as something else, and I can't remember. So somebody who's watching on Facebook, prior to Memorial Day, what do they call this day or this weekend?
Because there's veterans.
It's Veterans Day, the Flag Day.
Flag Day. So it was something else
Yeah,
other than Memorial Day?
I'm thinking it was.
Yeah.
But prior to when it became Memorial Day. So a lot of people tuned in already early in the show.
It's a good weekend for gardening.
It's a great weekend.
Somebody
3-day
just
weekend?
commented on
Carla
beautiful weather
Carla
in
knew.
San Jose.
Decoration Day.
Decoration Day.
Carla, thank
Yes.
you so much. Oh, my, to get that off of my mind. Does that ring a
that-
bell with you now?
Is this
Yeah.
the day that was the final day for you to take down your Christmas decorations? Before?
No.
Oh,
No.
That's not.
It's when they decorated the grave sites.
Yeah.
Grave sites.
Carla, thank you very
okay.
much.
Yeah.
So you would go out to the cemeteries
right.
and actually put.
Veronica says Remembrance Day.
Well, you know what? Dana says great info to you, John, on Memorial Day.
Oh,
But we're not sure John's correct or not. It sounded good.
you can look it up.
Civil War. Decoration Day. That was it. Decoration Day.
What were we talking about though?
It was a big day in the nurseries, independent nurseries back in the Midwest.
Oh, back when the nurseries declared their independence.
No, what they used to do was they would sell a lot of items for, wreaths, live wreaths and things.
color bowls,
Right.
all that stuff. Like I remember.
Well, they didn't have color bowls back then.
No.
No.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
They didn't have like arranged red, white, and blue.
No, and
anything?
do you know that there were no color bowls when I first came to California?
Really?
Yeah.
So color bowls are kind of a new thing, huh?
I remember I was working at the store, the Nurseryland in Escondido, and your dad was around then. And the first color bowls that they started were planted and then grown out.
Yeah. Yeah, like they started with little plants.
Yeah.
And nowadays
Little
they just
plugs, yeah.
nowadays they just actually just stuff all the old plants in there. It's kind of like a soup in a restaurant where they just will have like all the leftovers and this is what they make with it. Those are color bowls today.
Okay. Is there a name for that soup? Where they just kind of toss everything in?
Soup, is it soup du jour?
Well, soup du jour,
of the day?
soup of the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's called. But
Veronica
real quick-
apologized, by the way, for even mentioning Remembrance Day because she's wrong.
Apology accepted, Veronica.
But I'm kind of still stuck on this whole thing where, I mean, for those of you that don't know what color bowls are that are listening to the show right now, you would go into the nursery and they would have a 10 or 12 inch low
Half
bowl,
Right.
That they would put flowers in, and it would be a theme: red, white, and blue, red, different combinations of flowers. And you basically were able to just take those home, put them on your patio or whatever. And now you have instant floral arrangement, right? And color bowls used to be so popular. Hanging basket combinations and color
Right.
bowls. Not so much anymore, but for the longest time, I mean, if you didn't have red, white, and blue color bowls for Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 4th of July at your nursery, you did not know what you were doing, because that was, people would walk out. They'd be, I mean, $20 is kind of like the price that I remember them being for, and I'm sure they're a lot more expensive now, but back when they were first coming out,
$9.99.
$9.99, yeah.
$9.99. Then they went up to $12.99.
Yeah.
And there were no plastic.
They were all terracotta?
Yeah.
Wow.
They were the Mexican clay
Okay.
from Guadalajara.
Yeah. Dang. That's a
Yeah,
good
They
deal
were
then.
pretty heavy.
Yeah. They probably broke a ton.
Yeah. The one of the items we sold a lot of was the paint.
Talavera?
The what?
Talavera, the painted Mexican pots? Or what do you say?
No. The paint that you'd paint
the
the inside
sealer.
with the sealer.
The
Yeah.
sealer.
Because otherwise they would just melt.
they turn right back into
Yeah,
terracotta.
because it wasn't fired clay. you
Yeah.
know. I think it was sun-dried, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, no, these holidays were big color bowl days, hang basket days, because you would, put them out in your house in the front, red, white, and blue,
Right.
or whatever, and it makes sense. Like the would be a big holiday for nurseries too, because if they're going to the, cemeteries, why
Right.
not put a flower arrangement or something, that's more than just a cut flowers.
Well, also back there, let's see, Mother's Day was the biggest weekend
Right.
of the year. And then you're only 2 weeks later in Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the week after Memorial Day, the nurseries stopped carrying flowers. It was
Like,
just season's
done.
over.
Season's over?
Yeah.
Wow.
13 weeks. They had 13 weeks to
To
sell.
do whatever it is.
Right. Then they would spend the rest of the year trying not to lose everything they made in the spring.
Wow.
Oh, wow. But it's interesting to kind of see the trends of things, because combination pots were so popular for so long, and they still are a little bit, but I don't see the number as we used to see them when it comes to hanging baskets
Right.
and color bowls. It's kind of interesting.
Mm.
Maybe people are doing more themselves then.
Yeah.
Right? Before, it's funny that you say people actually planted them out, like grew them out,
Right.
because nowadays
No,
if
you want it ready to go. It's
Yes.
like a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah.
It just lasts a little longer,
yeah,
and then you throw it out.
Well, speaking of Memorial Day, John's quote of the week, which, by the way, Tiger, used to be referred to as the quote of the day,
Yeah,
but now we stretch it out for the entire week.
good, because
So,
they're good quotes.
They're good, and you can go back into the newsletter and reread it as many times as you want.
Yeah.
I picked this because of you, by
Of course
the way.
you do. You love to pick your quotes revolving around me.
And the quote is, on Memorial Day, I don't want to only remember the combatants. There were also those who came out of the trenches as writers and poets, who started preaching peace, men and women who've made this world a kinder place to live. And that was from Eric Burden.
Oh.
Eric Burden of the Animals.
Exactly.
Now, you would never think he would say something like that.
Well,
he was referred to back then as the little man with a big voice,
Really?
because he's like 5'3", 5'4".
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What's an Animals song?
House of the Rising Sun.
Oh, I know that one.
And then Don't Let
San
Me
Fran-
Be
what a-
Misunderstood.
What about San Francisco Nights?
San Francisco Nights. Yeah,
So that was right in the middle of the whole
British
isn't-
invasion.
Yeah, well,
64,
hippie
65.
I was going to say Vietnam, right? Like,
Oh.
weren't those like real big Vietnam songs?
Yeah, they became more into the mid 60s, late 60s. Vietnam was kind of getting underway basically as far as awareness in this country, more mid to late 60s. But 64, 65, things are starting to happen,
Yeah.
definitely. But go listen to some Animals music this weekend.
I'm listening to that book. It's a new book. It's called The Women, and it's about the women in Vietnam, the
really?
nurses and people that it's like a historical fiction kind of a thing.
Oh, good
Kinda
for you. That's
interesting.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see, John. Tiger, got about a minute before our first break, so let's tease our guest. Well, not tease her literally,
Yeah,
but
poke-
tease our audience.
we're
with
not going to poke fun at Melinda.
who's
She's a
gonna
good
be on
friend
the-
of ours.
Who's going to be on with us today?
Yeah,
Who
we're
is
gonna
it,
we're gonna be talking with Melinda Myers, and we're gonna be talking pollinator plants. She's got a webinar coming up to discuss more pollinator plants, and so we're gonna kind of tease our listeners with what her webinar will be about.
A lot of teasing going on.
Exactly.
Tell you how to sign up for it. Because
Yep.
you have to, that's what webinars are, right? You got to sign up for it.
Got to sign up for it.
Okay, so that's going to be happening on the other side. So with that in mind, we'll take our break right now for our good friends. We refer to them as good friends on Biz Talk Radio. Thank you for tuning in. This show and every show brought to us by Fertilome. We thank Fertilome for supporting us, keeping us on the air. We also thank Stephanie, her team at Biz Talk Radio for keeping us on the air each and every weekend as well. So with that in mind, I'm Brian Main, John Begnasker, Tiger Palafox. Back after these messages, Melinda Myers is next here on Garden America. Okay, we are back after the break. It is Garden America, of course, here. I'm Brian Main. John Begnasker, Tiger Palafox. Tiger, if you're ready to go, we've got Melinda Myers standing by, and this should be a lot of fun. Been a while since we've spoken with her.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've spoken with our good friend Melinda Myers, joining us today to discuss some pollinator plants because she has an upcoming webinar to discuss more pollinator plants. And for those of you that don't know what pollinator is, it's basically we're making flowers. We're making new plants. Melinda, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. It's always good to chat with you guys. And one of my favorite topics as a gardener, we all know how important pollinators are. You know, that's what we depend on for food and fiber. And as gardeners, we get to work amongst all those wonderful pollinators. And hopefully we can talk about ways to attract more to the gardens and landscapes.
And it's pretty interesting when you really dive deep because, you know, most people think like, oh, they got flowers, you know, bees or butterflies go over there, they touch them, they go to another flower and move on. But it's when you really get into it, there's specific flowers to specific creatures. And when I say creatures, because it's not just bees and butterflies out there. And then not only that, the flower design, the flower color, the fragrance, they either separate themselves from other things or they attract things. So, you know, when you're putting together a pollinator, you can't just a pollinator garden. You don't just think like, oh, these have flowers, I'll put these in there. You can get real specific on what you want to attract and what you don't want to attract, right?
Oh, exactly. So, you know, you brought up a good point. When we think of pollinators, we think of honeybees and, you know, monarchs. I call them the poster children of the pollinator world because everybody's concerned about them. And if we take care of the environment for them, we're also helping others. But things like moths most of them feed in the evening. There are some day-feeding moths. So we want some white, sweet-smelling flowers or pale-colored ones that flower at night, things like 4 o'clocks that are late in the evening, things like Nicotiana, some of those type of things. Bees, you know, we think of honeybees, but 90% of our bees are solitary. They get along well. They just have their own nest, and they don't need to be in a hive like honeybees or bumblebees that nest underground. And 70% of those are underground, and a lot of them are very specific. Like you said, there is a squash bee that pollinates squash plants. So we want to make sure that when we're prepping our garden, like you said, we have a variety. Things that bloom early, things that bloom middle, things that bloom late. Think colors, and as you mentioned, shapes, certain shapes. You know, look at how bumblebees work. They pollinate tomatoes. Tomatoes are self-pollinating. The wind blows the pollen. But bumblebees help really increase productivity. And the way the flower's designed and the way the bumblebees are designed, they really work well together. In fact, there are some places that are doing bumblebee hives just like they do honeybees, moving them from farms to increase productivity. Then we have those slow-moving beetles. You know, they're not the best pollinators. They like things that are dull white or green and things that smell strong like Canadian ginger or magnolia flowers. But they still, as they wander from one flower to the next, they're doing their job. Probably the most annoying one may be the flies, right? Because they always feel like they're in your face, and not that they're doing anything. But they're usually in places that are dark and damp, and things like skunk cabbage and goldenrods and bulbs and things like that. And they're good at those trap plants, those things that, you know, they have to work to get it. They work and get in, and then they're kind of trapped, and to get out, they move around and they take some pollen with them. So you're right. Having a diverse group of colors and flower forms is a great way to bring a lot of the different pollinators to your landscape and your garden.
And I do want to make sure that people understand that, you know, when you talk about creating a pollinator garden, you have to be willing to accept bugs in your life, right? Like, because like that's the thing, we, you know, as gardeners, we go through our whole life protecting our plants from bugs. You know, we don't want these bugs around our garden. They're going to damage our plants. But when you have a pollinator garden, you have to accept it. You have to accept flies and moths and worms and beetles into your environment, because that they're doing their job. That's why they're there. And you know, you want to be able to kind of almost embrace the idea that you have all these things fluttering around your garden or crawling around your garden, because, you know, that's kind of the goal. If you
Is that a sign of a healthy garden?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you see a bunch of bugs in a garden, it's because you brought in all these different aspects, right, Melinda?
Oh, exactly. And I find the less pesticides you use, and preferably none, especially if you're trying to bring insects in to pollinate your flowers, the last thing you want to do is kill the good guys. But a lot of the insects take care of each other. I have some plants. I feed hummingbirds. I have feeders, but I have lots of plants that the hummingbirds love. My lilac, my weigela, a lot of different plants. And I'll watch the hummingbirds munch on the aphids on my native honeysuckle vine. So not only am I feeding it, enjoying their visits and their pollinating, but they're taking care of some of the insect problems too. So the less intervention we do, the better nature can do it, managing the bad guys and keeping the good guys in our garden. And another thing is we can get a little messy. And I've always been kind of a messy gardener. You know, I like leaf litter in the ground. It's a great mulch, suppresses weeds, conserves moisture, great way to repurpose those fall leaves. But it creates a nice habitat for a lot of our pollinators. There's a moth called the shivering moth that pollinates fall blooming witch hazel. It overwinters in the leaf litter, and in the fall, when the witch hazel's blooming, you think, what's out there to pollinate? It shakes, it shivers to warm its muscles, its wing muscles, so it can come up and pollinate the flowers when it seems like nobody else is around to do the job. Great insulation for toads and frogs that eat some of the bad insects, including mosquitoes. So if we invite in the good guys, we bring in some of the good guys that will manage the ones that are problems in our gardens as well. And one of the researches we've found, some of the research lately has shown that we need to change our garden cleanup. I used to say, hey, it's March, I'm in the Midwest, right? So we get a nice day in March, you clean up your garden, you get ready for spring. Well, guess what? A lot of the pollinators are still overwintering in that plant debris. And they found that if we cut back our stems, wait as long as possible till temperatures are in the 50s, so that varies wherever you live, but if we cut back the stems to only 18 to 24 inches and leave most of them, you know, at least half intact, those are summer homes for a lot of our native bees. And the new growth covers it, so you won't even notice. So changing some of those habits as well as tolerating the insects we're trying to attract is great for the pollinators and the health of your garden.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you brought up the poster child, the monarch butterfly for a pollinator, and that's the only the Asclepius, which is the food source for monarch caterpillars, is the only plant in the retail garden center where I will see people picking off caterpillars and putting it on their plant to then take home with them, which is fascinating. But Melinda, we got to take a break. When we get back from the break, let's talk about some specific plants. But also, you brought up the idea of that leaf mulch, and when we were in England, we saw areas where people would leave little arrangements of sticks and things in the garden for that reason. So
They would put down branches.
Yeah, they would put down branches,
Right.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So when we get back from break, we will continue chatting with Melinda Myers.
Okay, break for Biz Talk Radio. And, of course, those watching us live here on Facebook Live, any questions for Melinda, do post that in the comments section. We have one from Kevin John when we come back, so go ahead and add that to the list if you're so inclined with a question or comment. This is Garden America, back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. Garden America is back after that break, a bit longer on Biz Talk Radio. Thank you for supporting our sponsors on Biz Talk Radio. Thank you to Fertile Home, our major sponsor here on Garden America. So we are back chatting with Melinda Myers. Anything else we want to get to before we hit Kevin's question?
Let's go ahead and have Kevin's question.
Go ahead, John.
Hey, Melinda. This question is from Kevin in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And he says he's wondering what pollinator will pollinate his apple and cherry trees, as it's been really cold there, and he hasn't seen any bees yet.
Oh, well, mason bees are usually the ones that take care of a lot of our fruit plants. And we've had such a strange year all across the country. I'm based in Wisconsin, and we had 70 degrees in February, followed by 13 degrees the next morning. It's in the 50s here now, and so I understand the frustration. And so I think a lot of the crazy fluctuating temperatures and extremes are having an impact on our pollinators. And unless you're bringing bees in, it's just waiting for the weather to warm up for those mason bees to show up. Typically, those are the native bees that take care of a lot of the pollination for us. So hopefully they're out and about, and he's just not seeing them because they're not going in large masses, but rather smaller numbers, but very efficient.
Yeah. Hey, on one of our trips to Europe, we had someone with us who was really interested in creating homes for pollinators. And I was wondering, I've seen some of those mason bee homes that you can go ahead and buy because they're, as you mentioned, they're solitary bees. Have you had any experience with using those, and do you think it's worth it?
You know, and you can make your own. And a couple things. And on my website, we do have a tip on how to make mason bees on my mason bee homes on our website. Right. And a couple things that are really important. We have to be clean. You know, the thing we're attracting them. So cleanliness is important. So changing out the tubes or cleaning out. You know, you can drill holes in a block of wood. You can buy nesting tubes. You can use straws. You can create your own. Now, for those of us in the north, one of the things we need to do is protect them over winter because most of the mason bees are cavity nesters, so they're nesting in trees normally. And so they've got that insulation of the big trunk of the tree. And so in a little nesting box, if you're in the north and it's cold, you need to move your nesting box into, say, an unheated garage. A lot of people put them in a 5-gallon bucket, cut a hole, so when the temperatures are warm up in the spring and they become active, you can move the whole thing out and then put up a fresh, clean hive for them or nest for them as well. I was at the spring trials one year in California, and one of the growers had a huge pollinator mason bee box, and it was great to watch. So the female would come out and she'd get a dab of mud, and she'd go in and she'd seal off the cell, and then back in, lay an egg, and then go get another dab of mud, and it was very exciting to watch. A daycare near me set up a mason bee house and had great success showing the kids how the bees nest and getting them more comfortable with the bees and the environment, because I think there's so much fear, and I get it if you're allergic. There's a whole level of care you need to take around bees, but I think a lot of there's a lot of fear, needless fear around bees and stinging because most of them want to leave us alone. They don't want to even be near us. So if we leave them alone, most of us as gardeners have probably gardened among the bees and the bumblebees without any problem, as long as we don't mess with their house. So, yeah, the mason bee houses are good. Just make sure you're willing to commit. Otherwise, creating the habitat and in nature is a great way to do it. I tried honeybees for a couple years and decided it was much more easier for me to create a habitat, gardens, and leaving dead trees. I have a property where I can have dead trees on the ground and standing trees for the woodpeckers and the leafcutter bees to nest in. That was a lot easier than trying to manage a honeybee hive. So that was kind of tells you how I am. A little on the lazy side, maybe.
I always thought that mason bees lived in Masonic temples.
And they wore their little hats, right?
Common mistake. That's
It's funny you mention kind of the villainization of bees, right? I think that when I was growing up, obviously that was the whole like African bee craze. Like soon all these African bees were just going to take over the United States and just kill everyone as swarms cross the country.
We'd have to walk around in bee suits, right?
Exactly. That's kind of like what I grew up in, just fearing bees, that they were all out to get us. And I do like how that context is now, obviously not true. And, people are more embracing the idea of living with bees, allowing them to do their thing, be a part of us. When you go into looking for bee removal, the top hit is live bee removal. Isn't just like killing beehives. When you remove a beehive because it's in an area you don't want it, there's all kinds of people out there that will come out and actually do a live removal and then transfer that beehive.
If they're just European bees, I work amongst them all the time. They don't care. They'll buzz around you, but they're busy doing their thing. And as long as you're just, ignoring them to a degree, but that whole Africanized killer bee thing.
Yeah, you remember that.
From the 80s, 90s into the early 2000s. They pretty much have control over that right now because they've done some interbreeding, and they're breeding down the aggressiveness of those bees. They're still out there, but not as bad as it was.
Yeah, definitely. But Melinda, let's talk a little bit about some of the plant choices. You had mentioned some earlier in having these diverse groups, and you had said, just sometimes, incorporating these into the landscape, you don't have to have a beehive. You don't have to have these homes. You can just have a landscape that leans towards that. What are some tips when it comes to plant choices and maybe incorporating some things into the garden?
You mentioned milkweed as the host plant for the monarch caterpillar, but it's also a great pollinator plant. You will see hummingbirds, a variety of bees, and butterflies nectaring on the flowers. So you're helping not only monarchs but other pollinators as well. I like to use things like butterfly weed because it's less aggressive and great for full sun, or the swamp milkweed. Go with your local. The Xerces Society has great information on the different milkweeds for different regions of the country. I'm a huge fan of salvias. They are great for hummingbirds and butterflies and bees. Your herbs are excellent. If you like thyme, boy, it makes a great ground cover. It's a great herb. The bees love the flowers on that as well. Your parsleys, your dill, those things. I'm not known as a great cook, but I love to include those in my garden and my landscape when I use them for cooking. But I also love to bring in the swallowtail caterpillars. That's a host plant for those. And the flowers attract a lot of beneficial insects. Some of those parasitic wasps that feed on some of the problem caterpillars. So you're bringing in good guys that are not only pollinating but helping to manage some of those garden pests as well. There's one of my favorite plants is Calmentha. It's in the mint family, but it's not. If you get Calmentha nepida, that's a subspecies that, boy, we have it at our state fair garden, and you walk by and you hear, just like you were saying, Brian, they don't care about us. The bees are just having a great time nectaring on the plant. You can hear that buzzing, and it's great to watch. That plant is covered with bees. Native plants are always good choices as well. Things with tubular flowers, like our native honeysuckle vines, like fuchsias, like 4 o'clocks. Hibiscus are great for bringing in the hummingbirds, and hummingbirds are great pollinators as well. I was I'm doing my talk is on underappreciated pollinators, and that includes things in some parts of the country like lizards and mice. And I'm like, okay, I can embrace the beetles, the mice, as long as they stay in my garden. I'm good. But and bats as well. They eat mosquitoes, but they pollinate some of those more exotic fruits. Exotic from my standpoint as a northerner, but things that you guys are growing in your gardens a little more readily than we can. I'm sure you guys have some of your favorites as well.
It's funny you mentioned bats, and when we were in Costa Rica, that was a huge pollinator. What was one of the big crops, John? Do you remember that they mentioned? Was it coffee or something that was it was a bat that pollinated it? It's one of their major production crops. I can't remember which one it was, but I was just so.
For some reason, I'm thinking chocolate. Was it the chocolate?
I think it was chocolate. Like,
yeah, maybe it was.
And like, it's just so interesting because I would never associate bats with pollinators, especially when it comes to like a production crop. But like you said, Melinda, there's a lot of plants out there that you're like, oh wow, how does that get pollinated? It's got to flower at night. A bat comes around, and the fragrance, the direction of the flower and all that had to do with it. Hey, Melinda, we are going to have to take another break right now. When we get back, you have a great opportunity for people to learn more about pollinators coming up. So we'll talk about your webinar coming up.
You betcha. Back with Melinda Myers after we take a pause. These messages on Biz Talk Radio. You are tuned in to Garden America on this Memorial Day weekend. I'm Brian Main, John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox, along with Melinda Myers. Back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. We are back. Thank you for tuning in to Garden America. By the way, those listening right now on Biz Talk Radio, this is the final segment of hour number 1. Top of the hour news coming your way. We come back at 6 minutes after as we continue our conversation, Tiger, with Melinda Myers.
Yeah, and Melinda has a lot of great opportunities to learn more about gardening on specific topics. If you go to Melinda Myers' website, melindamyers.com, you can see all the webinars and classes and events that she goes to. But you have one specifically designed for pollinators coming up, right, Melinda?
You bet. On June 5th, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to be doing a webinar on underappreciated pollinators. So we'll talk more about the plants. We'll talk more about how to plant, planting in mass, making sure you have something in bloom throughout the season, some of these, creating that habitat. And then at the end of every live webinar, I answer questions. But I also record the webinars and leave them on my website so you can watch for free at your convenience. Because I have no restriction on paper, my handouts tend to be really long with lots of links to other resources. Because I find right? 2 pages just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So I like to give you lots of resources that I found helpful that I think can help you. If you want to learn more, great. If you don't, you can just pass through and do the basics on the handout. And so I find it's great. It's been a wonderful community. I started doing webinars during COVID because that was a way I could reach people. And I was happy to find that gardeners are great. Even though, we're not sitting in the same room in a building, there's this sense of community because gardeners are always good at sharing what they know and passing it along to others. So I love the opportunity to chat. This is a part of our library program that we've been doing for a few years, sponsored by our energy company, We Energy, and teamed up with the Wisconsin and Upper Peninsula of Michigan public libraries to get the word out, but everybody is welcome. And so they just allow me to reach a lot of gardeners, and we hope a lot of your listeners can join as well.
And, you mentioned, you being in Wisconsin, but, when it comes to, number one, your ability, you have so much knowledge that you can mostly address any question, no matter where they're kind of coming from. But then, you mentioned the community online. It also helps because if somebody is in Kansas or California or Florida, if you can't answer their question, maybe specifically to what they're asking, there's a good chance that somebody will be in the area that could possibly throw their own 2 cents in. And again, that community where people can share information and, their successes, their failures. What a great way to just continue learning more. How long are you usually on for one of those webinars?
So I try really hard to keep my portion down to an hour,
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes to an hour. And then I stay on until all the questions are answered. So depending on how many questions we've had a few marathons, and I record the Q&A session as well. So if you can't stay with me as long as the Q&A is going, you can always come back later and fast forward to the part where you had to sign off. I have to be honest, how do we learn? We learn from each other, as you mentioned, Tiger. I have people from Texas and California and British Columbia and the Northeast and the Southeast and all over the country, and we've even had a few people from Australia and New Zealand and the UK joining us. And so obviously these gardeners, like you said, have a lot of input. And so sometimes, somebody will ask, and in the chat they'll talk, oh, I've grown this one, or oh, I've had problems with this in my area. And so it's great because we all get to learn something from each other.
I have to mention, too, Melinda, that I've been gardening for almost 60 years now, and I've listened to you and interacted with you dozens of times over the last few years, and I don't think I'm exaggerating to say I have not interacted with you one time where I didn't learn something new myself, even with all the experience that I have. So our listeners out there really take advantage of going to Melinda's webinar. And your website, by the way, is fantastic. There's all kinds of knowledge there that people have easy access to if they go to melindamyers.com.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. I always learn something every time I speak. I think that's the joy of what we get to do, right? Hang out with gardeners, hang out with each other, and learn something new every time we either go to the garden or go to a lecture. So thank you for those kind words. It's always a pleasure to chat with you three.
We have just a couple of minutes. John, do you want to hit that last question from Carla, and then we'll have to sign off?
Okay, Carla says that she doesn't like them, but she's fascinated by yellow jacket wasps. She said they always seem to just hover over plants, and they don't sit on them, so I don't know how they are as pollinators. Will you be discussing them on your webinar?
We will talk, wasp and hornets are pollinators as well, and I get it, trying to coexist with those. The German yellow jackets aren't native, so a lot of people have a lot easier time, but neither are honeybees either. They're from Europe. So, yes, we'll talk about kind of ways of living with them, even ground bees, because one of the problems with ground bees is it always seems like they put their nest right by your door, right? And it makes people nervous.
Yeah.
So making a bare area, maybe facing the southeast, leaving it unmulched, leaving no plants away from your door where they can nest is a great way. Michigan State University has a great bulletin online about ground bees and the fact that it's just a short period that they're really nesting and that we need to avoid them and how we can live with them. So, yeah, I will definitely talk about some of those. How do we live together and still be able to be happy, them and us as well? So, great question. And we'll talk a little bit about the yellow jackets as well as some of the hornets and wasps.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Melinda. I did post a link for people to register. And again, I do want to or let people know that it is a free webinar, but you have to register for it. I posted the link on our chat right now to be able to join Melinda on June 6th, was it?
June 5th.
June 5th. All right. So thank you very much for joining us, Melinda. Have a great rest of the weekend, and you take care. Look forward to seeing you at the webinar.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Melinda Myers. John, something new all the time from her. Because I can, as she discusses the topics that she's hitting on, I see your brain moving. I see the eyebrows go up. And that's usually two indications that John disagrees with what somebody's talking about, or he has just learned something new. And in this case, it is a good thing it's something new.
Right. I don't think Melinda has ever given me anything to disagree with. Sometimes she surprises me, like with her hugel culture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Talk about habitats in her yard.
Yeah,
hugel culture. That's a great way.
We got a break coming up. We have to break for Biz Talk.
Did you see Kevin's question? I think that's kind of an interesting question.
The
avocado.
Exactly, because he doesn't. It's a fuerte, right? And he doesn't have a host to.
Well, we'll talk about the
Okay.
A and B type avocados.
Okay, so back after top of the hour news here on Biz Talk Radio. Do stay with us. We are back at 6 minutes after for Biz Talk Radio, much quicker on Facebook Live. Stay with us. This is Garden America. Welcome back to Garden America. If you're just joining us on Biz Talk Radio because this is hour number 2, we welcome you. By the way, any of the show you missed, you can go to our YouTube channel. That's Garden America Radio Show. This show will be uploaded later on this afternoon. You can watch all the previous shows as well. That's Garden America. That's the Garden America Radio Show on our YouTube channel, and you can watch any show that you so desire, including this one if you did miss the first hour on Biz Talk Radio.
Now, Kevin had a question that we can actually take in a few
Yes.
different directions. And he had asked, he's got a fuerte avocado. Is there any artificial ways to pollinate an avocado? Because he's got a fuerte.
Doesn't have a Haas.
Yeah, and doesn't have a Haas. And, so first off, people that are not familiar with avocados is that they are not self-fertile varieties, which means you kind of have to have two. An A and a B type is how they classify them in the avocado world, to be able to pollinate each other, which then
Right.
can lead you to having actual avocados. And if you're in an area that's, I would say, more metro, where meaning you have a lot of varieties of plants in a dense area, there's a really good chance, for us in Southern California, that you've got a variety of avocados within a mile as the bird flies, which is what they use for your pollination range, meaning if you've got this plant within a mile of your house as the bird flies, there's a good chance it's going to get pollinated. And whether they're talking about avocados or fruit trees or citrus or vegetables, that's kind of like the term that they use. But if you live in a rural area where maybe your neighbor is a mile away, you have to have those plants close by because they need to be able to cross-pollinate each other. I don't know of any way to artificially pollinate something like that. Do you, John?
Let me see how to put this.
Yeah, look at the expression on his
Yeah.
face.
Because
Well, yes, you can. If you don't have bees around, there's nothing to stop you from using your hands.
but do you have to go get a branch from another?
Whatever works for
Avocado?
you,
No,
Tiger.
avocados are self-pollinating for the most part.
Okay.
The A and B that you're describing is, at least I find, is mostly for commercial production.
Oh, okay.
To increase the amount,
Increase.
maximize the
Right,
amount of
But
crop.
they will produce self alone.
Right, and just like with cherimoya,
Mm-hmm.
those usually need to be self-pollen or hand-pollinated.
So how
right?
should Kevin go about it?
Well, just
Shake it.
well, either that or just get a little brush, an artist brush. and
Yes, exactly.
Just go from one flower to the other.
So to get more into that, number one, you have to make sure that the flowers are open, right? Because like when you have an avocado,
Right.
and you see they're budded up,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do it then because the flower's not open. So there's that time that the flowers are open and active and ready to be pollinated, and then if you wait too long, you miss the opportunity. If you go too early, you haven't been able to do it yet. So you
Are
have
we
to
talking
time
about the birds and the bees here?
We are.
Okay,
We are,
okay,
Brian.
okay.
It's all about timing.
Okay.
And there's actually, like John mentioned, grab a brush. There's actually a lot of devices out there.
We
for-
talked about that.
Yeah, for pollinating. Some
Right.
people
Remember
use
the
an electric
veggie bee.
The veggie bee,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It
Electric
vibrates, right?
toothbrush. Like there's all kinds of things. So, yes, there are ways, and so then what you're getting at with the A and B is more for maximizing production
Right.
of the actual, because having those two, you get a better, what would that be, pollination rate,
Right.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Got it.
So there you go, Kevin. Hopefully that
Yeah.
you can do it yourself.
Yeah. Now,
And
does
don't
that
let
work?
anybody stop you.
Now, does that also come into play for other fruit trees? Like they'll talk about like an apple, like you needed this apple and you need that apple. Where
No. Some
Because
Some varieties of fruit trees have to be cross-pollinated with another variety.
so they have to be.
Right.
So you have to have
right,
that
they,
other variety.
Right. They're self-sterile,
Okay.
so they won't pollinate themselves.
Okay. So not all.
But
so,
it's not all variety. Like
Right.
it's not all apples, but
Right.
there are certain varieties of apples that have to be
yes.
cross-pollinated. Right.
Some fruit trees like peaches, apples, nectarines, all those are self-fertile.
Right.
Some have to be crossed with a specific other variety kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's usually not specific.
Okay.
It's usually just another.
Okay.
But one of the things that when you're looking at varieties, there's a lot of variations, and one of the variations in varieties is when they bloom.
Mm-hmm.
So you want definitely, if you need cross-pollination, you want two that are blooming at the same time.
Because if you have one that blooms early and ones that bloom late, there's a
Right.
very low chance that
Right.
they're ever going to cross-pollinate.
They'll never meet each other.
Yeah. You know.
Our friend Kevin wants to know what those yellow flowers are.
Hey, what the heck
yeah,
are
we were going
those?
to talk about
John,
that
you
right
brought
now.
those in.
I did, and I'm fascinated by protea. Proteas are native to South Africa, and are there some native to Australia too?
I think so.
I'm trying
Yeah.
to think. I didn't, for some reason, that just slipped my mind. But anyway, there's proteas last forever, and this is a what is that, Tiger? A leucospermum?
I believe so. I haven't looked at the name. I'm assuming it is. Though.
And they come in different colors, but for some reason, I've always been fascinated with the yellow ones. You see orange a lot, and sometimes you've seen red, but the yellow to me just really stands out.
And John, as much as we've discussed in the past, leaving the tags on certain plants so that you know what it is in case you forget or it
Right.
becomes weather worn. You also like to adhere to the fact of leaving the price tag on your pots as well. You feel that's very important because a year later when he goes to buy it, he'll know if the price went up or down. And I think that's a very good thing that you do.
That's the mini pearl way of keeping track of your
Exactly.
plant costs.
Is it more expensive than it was last year? Did the price go down?
Tiger's not going to know what that reference was, are you?
No.
Do you know have you ever heard of mini pearl?
No.
The
I
Grand Ole
thought you
Opry?
were talking about a necklace or something.
The Grand Ole Opry?
I know what that is.
Okay, well, she used to be a host along with Roy Acuff.
Oh, yeah.
And,
that guy.
and her deal was a hat. What
A
kind
straw hat.
Straw hat, and the price tag was on it. It was always
it was
dangling
always
in front of her.
hanging down.
Yeah, that was just her deal.
So that's where like athletes and rappers, where they wear their hats and they have all the tags, the stickers still on it.
Yes, the
It
stickers
started with
still-
her, huh?
Yeah, there you go.
It
We're going to
started
give
with
her
her.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they make sure the bill's flat. Don't cup the bill.
Just as Tiger didn't know what we were talking about, I just have no idea what you were just talking
Oh,
about.
I
Exactly.
do. Underneath the hats, the price
they have their
tags
little
underneath
stickers.
there.
I've
Sometimes on
never,
top,
never heard of that.
they
never
just leave
seen
it on
that.
there.
Yeah.
They just leave it.
So
and
you're
it's
like
stiff.
you're like a cross between Tiger
He's-
and I.
yeah,
you're
he-
right in the middle.
I'm in
Exactly.
between.
You
I'm
live
like
in
my
both
dad. I want to
worlds.
keep up on what's going on.
There you go.
What are you kids up to these days? Turn that music down.
So John mentioned the protea, and this is a leucospermum. Now I will say, leucospermums have become very popular recently because proteas were actually very difficult to grow. Meaning like protea plants, like they had to have the right watering, exposure, drainage, all that. But the leucospermum seem to be more versatile, but they still give you that really neat looking flower.
Yeah.
And I love the marketing of this particular one because it's called a forever flower, because they will put that flower into an arrangement and it kind of lasts forever, meaning it just looks that way forever. Like it doesn't, if you touch it and over time and damage it, the little, stamens and all of that will fall off. But if you see them dried, they look exactly like how it is on the plant.
It looks very alien. I love the way those things open up like that.
Yeah.
They just,
And if you feel the flower, Brian, it feels waxy.
Yeah.
like it could be fake, not even
Yeah.
real, right?
Yeah, exactly. Carla mentions that she saw them for a good price at Home Depot, and usually these things are really expensive. And this one came from Lowe's, and it was, I think, $19.98 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's why you leave the price tag on there, John.
But that's a good price for those, and usually don't see them in 1-gallon cans.
How big will those get?
Oh God!
Different varieties, though. There are some low growing, like sweeping,
Like-
kind of like horizontal ones.
Right, I would say like 3 to 4 feet.
You could leave that in the pot for a while, couldn't you? in that pot? For a little while?
Uh,
When's it time to move it into a bigger house?
is this so that we can convince Dana to let you get one?
Oh no, I'm just curious because a lot of times
I don't know if it would do well on yours because I think it would stay too wet.
it's too
Even if you didn't water it, your patio's so shaded that I think it would just struggle.
Well, I'd put it out in the sidewalk with the rest of them.
Uh-huh.
They get this time of the year. The sidewalk's going to get a lot of afternoon sun. But you're right. Yeah,
But I think John brings up a point of keeping in a pot. They're actually kind of difficult to keep in pot.
Yeah.
you
They're
want to
better
in
in the ground.
In the ground. We're going to take a break. This is fascinating. By the way, speaking of Minnie Pearl, Rochelle writes, "Howdy." We saw that. Okay, there you go. That was kind of her moniker there.
You know,
We're
you
gonna
took
take
the
a
words
break.
right out of my mouth. I was just going to tell you that.
We think a lot alike. This is Garden America. We're taking a break for Biz Talk Radio. Hey, we have returned. Thank you for sticking with us during the break. Hope you had a good break. We did. We love our breaks. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. A lot of good questions and a lot of interest struck up here with the conversation with the plant that John brought in, the Protea.
Yeah, I like the way that our listeners help each other with the questions, too, because Carla said so. It's not a protea. And Tanya in San Jose explained that it's in the Protea family.
Right.
It's not the Protea genus, which are sometimes referred to as feather flowers. Is that what they call them? But a lot of the
I thought
Would this be like
this is a pincushion.
like a second or third cousin? It's in
No,
the
no,
Protea
there's just
family.
all kind. I mean, Proteas usually refer to not the genus, but just to plants in the Protea family. So there's, there's Banksias, Leucospermums, Leucodendrons, Protea.
But is it Proteaceae?
Right,
That's the
right.
overall family.
Grevilleas are in the Protea family.
Yeah.
They live right next door to the Proteaceae family.
The Proteaceae is like the head family.
Yes.
And then you got the Grevillea, Leucospermum. Yeah, all those down there.
But you're right, John. We do appreciate the people on Facebook Live who could talk to each other and answer certain questions in and amongst ourselves. And I'm sure right now John is reading Kevin's question.
Yeah, Kevin's got a wonderful surprise growing in his backyard this year. He's going to be sending us a photo of it, and he trusts that we'll publish it in the newsletter.
You know what's funny? In Costa Rica, I'm sitting next to Kevin on the bus. And he goes, hey, come here a second. I got to ask you a question. I go, yeah, sure, Kevin. So how come John never publishes my pictures in the newsletter? I've sent him all these pictures, and he never puts them in. So I think that's what he's referring to.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
You know,
man.
He felt bad. He hurt his feelings.
He should feel bad if that was true, but I honestly cannot remember Kevin ever sending me a picture that I did not
He has
post.
your wrong
Okay,
email.
Kevin, John at gardenamerica.com to get your picture posted in the newsletter.
Well, I get them all the time.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it's more a reflection on Kevin not reading our newsletters.
Oh, did you hear that, Kevin?
Oh, you mean you
Them
do
are words.
post it?
Oh, always.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Yeah,
think
John is
I've
good,
ever
yeah.
not
Okay.
posted one.
All right.
Gotcha.
Well, Kevin, we're looking forward to this to be published in the newsletter because it says that you say it's very, very special.
Yeah.
So
Now, sometimes I have to struggle to get 3 pictures. We only post 3 a week.
Yeah.
And other times
too many.
I'll get like a dozen, and I've just got to pick 3.
Do we
tough,
have any? Has anybody sent you any critters or animals running around their backyard or?
Oh, my gosh. So, Cheryl, who came with us to Costa Rica?
Cheryl.
Right? Cheryl?
Oh, Sherry.
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 Oh,
Yes.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our Sherry.
Yeah.
Dairy a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Got it. We're good.
So I follow her on Facebook. She posted a video this week of her house. She has one of these security
I
cameras
saw that video.
of a rabbit and a gopher snake fighting. Like, it was
Like National Geographic.
Yeah, minutes
Like-
long fighting
Here's
each
the
other.
gopher snake fighting the rabbits in the backyard.
We should do that. I should get the video and do like a funny
gopher
voiceover
snake.
thing.
No, I didn't realize it was a gopher
I
snake.
think that's what she said.
Because I thought it was a rattlesnake.
I think she said gopher snake.
Ah,
Anyway, who won?
looked like the rabbit
It
one.
looked like the rabbit.
I will tell
did.
you, I've seen videos of rabbits fighting, and they're not to be messed with. I when it comes to snakes or predators, they go down with a fight. They really and
Did
they
you
kick.
ever read Watership Down?
No.
Oh, it's about rabbits fighting each other.
Watership Down.
Watership Down.
She said a rabbit tormenting a gopher snake.
Oh, so the rabbit's picking the fight.
Yeah.
But they'll do that sometimes to be the aggressor first of all, as to protect themselves and not wait to be attacked. But yeah, they kick. They're mean.
Kevin is being specific now. All right, Kevin, I think you're true. That's true. He picked out one picture that I did not post. And I remember that week because the picture was a little dark. It was a bay plant that he had.
Like a bay laurel?
Yeah, that he had brought from California. Oh. And that week I had a whole bunch. And because of the picture quality of that one, I picked another one. So I apologize for that. But Tanya backs me up here, Kevin, and she says she's seen pictures from you.
Hey, guess who's sending us greetings from Costa Rica? Drew.
What?
Our bus driver, right?
Hey.
Drew, thank you for
Morning,
reaching out.
Drew.
Hello, Drew.
Yeah. How fun. He's got to be, I think he's still on his vacation, right? Wasn't that the last trip of his,
I think, yeah.
his time right now? So he's kind of kicking back still?
Something about Drew, besides being an excellent driver.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you would go anywhere with him and trust him to get you there safely. But he had a great eyesight, vision.
Oh, yeah.
He could spot
He would pick things out?
Yeah.
He's like George Costanza. I can see that dime in the corner. I don't miss anything. I see them all.
Yeah, he made our trip so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So we're Tiger's putting together another tour for us. So
well, we're in the early stages of testing the waters to see who would be interested.
Yeah, maybe Drew will come and drive us on that one.
Right.
Yeah, Veronica mentioned that she read Watership Down, so she thinks she should do it, Brian.
See, and she says rabbits can be vicious.
But
Absolutely.
they made a cartoon of the movie, and the music for the movie was from Art Garfunkel.
I don't picture him being an aggressive singer-songwriter to match the aggressiveness of the rabbits.
What was the song
That's
that
the
he
point.
sang? One of our listeners will know the song that he sang, but it's not an aggressive song. It's it'll come to me. I can't think of it right now. But I remember I liked the book, so obviously I wanted to see the movie. And I'm thinking, we take our kids to it, and it's like rabbits fighting and killing and blood all over. And
really?
Somebody said, that really wasn't a movie for kids.
That's kind of like, it's funny because along the same lines, rabbit movies, there was they were more like tales.
Peter Rabbit.
Peter Rabbit.
Yeah,
like
Thumper from Bambi.
Well, no, but Peter Rabbit's kind of like you're saying, like an intense story as well. When you really know the real Peter Rabbit, not the cartoon Disney version of Peter Rabbit, but when you read the story, and then there was the mongoose in this
Ricky Tikki Tavi.
Yeah, that was an intense story too.
Yeah.
So.
Bright Eyes was the name of the song.
Bright Eyes.
Do you remember that song?
Yes, I do, actually.
Bright Eyes was the name of one of the rabbits. I'm thinking he gets killed. I don't want to ruin the movie for anyone, but he was it's called Bright Eyes because he had visions.
Oh.
And he could see things and see into the future.
Rabbit that can see into the future. Rabbits in gardens, though, not good.
We have a lot of rabbits.
Carla's view of the movie was, I hated that movie. It was dark and depressing.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We have two more segments still to come on this Memorial Day weekend. If you're listening to us after the fact, we hope you enjoy the show. Anyway, a break for our friends on Biz Talk Radio. Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Back after these messages. Two more segments here on Garden America. Garden America, back from the break as we continue looking at all the Facebook questions and comments. Boy, we went down a rabbit hole, didn't we? Yes,
to go.
we did go down a rabbit hole, and a lot of feedback there.
There's a lot of comments. They keep
Yes.
reproducing like rabbits.
So we have a lot of rabbits in our area, and yeah, they drop all the time, little rabbit pellets, as we like to call them.
That's how you know they've been there.
And our cats love to stare. Oh, boy, they're just fascinated by these rabbits.
Really?
Yeah, and they're big, healthy rabbits, too, because we have coyotes in the area. And every now and then, you'll go a month or two, like, where'd the rabbits go?
I've seen 2 coyotes in the past 2 weeks in city areas walking down the street. Wow. You know, like I will go years without seeing a
Right.
coyote.
Well,
And
Coyotes
we've
are
encroached.
distrustful.
are distrustful.
Did you ever see them look at you? You know, like they give you a sideways glance
You're
and
right.
they kind of keep going. Like
It's like that alley cat that trots down the alley.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of look over his shoulder, but keep on going with that. Well, yeah, they have good reason not to trust us.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think I'd trust us either if I was a coyote.
I never saw the Monty Python movie, but Mary says that the rabbit in the cave was vicious.
I can't remember that.
So vicious rabbits.
Yeah,
Now, there was a rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. Did we touch upon that already?
we did not, but there was.
Right.
It was the white rabbit.
Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit. Well, that's what the song is about.
Is it?
Yeah, if you go chasing rabbits. You never heard that song, Jefferson
I
Airplane.
probably have.
I think you
just
have.
can't
And that the
recall.
whole thing is about the whole psychedelic mushrooms and that whole Alice in Wonderland.
What song was that?
White Rabbit by Jefferson
White
Airplane.
Rabbit. Yeah, that's right.
With what's her name?
Grace
Grace Slick.
Slick.
Grace Slicks, yeah.
I remember the picture of Grace Slick holding her daughter upside down by her feet.
Well, that was Michael Jackson, wasn't it? He did the same thing,
the
but
balcony?
not upside
No,
down.
he
but-
didn't do it upside down.
Yeah.
This picture was her
Yeah,
holding. Yeah, I was
exactly.
thinking,
It
you know,
was the
she's
album-
not going to be a good mother.
The album is called Surrealistic Pillow,
Oh.
1967. Jefferson. I almost said Starship. Jefferson Airplane.
Right.
They became the Starship in the 70s.
They weren't any good when they became the Starship.
They had a couple of good. They did have a couple
Really?
of good songs. Yeah, they did. Miracles was a good song.
They never got better than Somebody to Love.
Let's see. Yeah. Well,
Always into the music.
absolutely.
Kevin,
What, Kevin? What?
We love Kevin. You know that.
we do, and he had his feelings hurt because I didn't post that. Take another picture.
Yeah,
Kevin.
take another picture, Kevin.
Make sure the lighting is good and send it to me, and I'll put it in the newsletter.
There you go. Yes. Yeah, because John is just not critical of just the plants. He's also critical of your photography skills.
Right.
But it's got to be a good photo, right? To be able to post it. Because
Well,
you're
yeah, because
sharing
John
it,
has to
and,
transfer it.
you know, it's got to be
into
a
the
good photo
newsletter.
to be able to kind of share it and
Right.
make sure that people can see whatever it is that.
Well, again,
is
I
in the
usually
photo.
try to Photoshop them and make them,
Yeah, but-
a little bit better. But I said that particular week I happened to get a lot of photos, so.
Mhm.
And to be honest, I can't remember exactly because
Well,
that was
yeah.
more than a week.
Thousands of pictures too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't feel hurt, Kevin, because
No.
I send John a
Right.
bunch of photos also, but he never posts them. Just
Post
kidding.
Brian's. I try to post Brian's all the time.
Well, you do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I send it to you in case you're lacking that week. Here, in case you need a picture, here's one.
Yeah.
You know, I was sending him pictures of dinner plates and cabinets and things that weren't garden related. He never
replied to
He
those?
never posted it or put it in the newsletter.
No,
So
he
I-
sent me a picture of Dana 5 weeks in a row, and I never posted
Yeah.
it. As much as I love Dana.
I figured, you want plants, you want things that are
Yeah.
outside that are growing,
Yeah.
which is why I asked about the animals, because sometimes people will send us something they caught walking in their backyard at night.
Tanya loves your music knowledge.
Thank you, Tanya. If you have any questions, let me know. Anything from the 1950s through the late 70s.
Country music too, right?
Well, I got into country. I was a country DJ
Right.
during
Yeah.
that time, so I kind of lost track a little bit about pop music. Yeah. Questions, comments right here on Facebook.
Kevin's going to get Terry, his wife, to help him
Yeah.
with the photo.
Good for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
And Carla's got a question. Back to plants. I
right.
love how she takes us back. Okay, guys, back to plants.
She says, my zonal geraniums in pots are not doing well. They've got brown spots on the bottom of the leaves. Is it rust? And yellow spots too. They're dropping their leaves.
Ah,
Suggestions.
I think overwatering.
Could be, and the weather's been really cool, so normally you
It's going
don't
to retain the water or
well,
moisture.
normally, yeah, you don't have a problem overwatering geraniums in the summer, but she's on the coast, cool weather on top of that, so you have rust and disease, and it may not be overwatering, but that's a good possibility, and it could be just the rust causing it, but there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean,
about that. I mean, you can pull
fertilize-
off the rusty leaves, or you can use a fungicide.
Yeah. But, fertilize will push out new growth.
Yeah.
And then if
so you could cut them back.
And if you manage the watering, then the new growth won't be as affected by it. So, that's something that you could possibly do.
We got a lot of heavy marine layer this weekend, too, and a little bit last week, and I've noticed that my plants were not drying out as quickly as they normally would if it was very hot and sunny.
Right? And
Yeah.
it was like a slight drizzle this morning.
And that's okay. You know what? The less I have to water, the better.
Well, and I mean, for us living in San Diego, we know the heat will come and the dry weather will come.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's coming.
So we don't have a problem delaying that as long as possible. It does push back our season a little bit. For the past couple of years, we've had this weird late spring, but it's almost a questionable thing where it's like, do we just go from, I don't know, early spring to summer sometimes, where all of a sudden you wake up one day and it's hot and dry and it never gets
and then it stays
cool
that way
again.
until October.
Exactly.
Anyway,
But-
John's grinning. Curious.
Well, I'm grinning because this
Kevin
is
right back again.
No, we had this question before, and we'll have to remember in the future that when we bring in a plant to move Brian's fake grass away.
Oh, because the people wonder what the grass is.
Because
too.
Millie in Napoma wants to know what that grass is.
Yeah.
And it's just plastic, right?
If you were to call that grass
actually, it
something-
feels stiff. It's kind of a stiff. I guess it's plastic, but I don't.
If you were to name that plastic grass, I think it'd be a carex.
A what?
Carex plasticus.
Carex plasticus.
Yeah, Carex plasticatus.
Yeah, because it's too thick to be a festuca, and it's not big enough to be like a Mollenbergia or Pennisetum or any of those. So I think it's a carex. We'll say it's a carex plastic.
Veronica, that's right. It's fake.
Well, what's funny is a lot of times people will think those proteas or that leucospermum are fake too,
right?
And you will see those fake in stores, and it is very difficult to tell which one is real and fake.
Oh,
sometimes.
like I said, even if you feel it, it feels plastic.
Yeah.
There's a roselet that way too.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of that, a couple of weeks ago we talked about different roses, and I brought up the imposter rose.
Right.
And you posted a picture of Carla's imposter rose in the newsletter.
I think Carla sent that picture
because of our discussion.
We were talking about it.
Yeah.
And I showed that picture to my wife, and I said, we need to get another one of these.
Yeah. It brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, that's funny.
Memories. That was
Just
Bob
memories
Hope.
of.
Was it Bob Hope?
You're thinking of thanks for the memories
Yeah.
when he would end his show.
does your
Thanks
guys'
for the
mind
memories.
go
I'm
to?
talking
The
about
other one would be Barbara Streisand.
How does it happen like that?
what going down because it's a flood. It's a flood of random consciousness.
Yeah.
It was the musical Cats, right?
See, he's still
Right.
in it.
Exactly. But I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago when the imposter rose was a big topic on our show. We discussed it for
Right,
months.
because I was responsible for
Right.
introducing that into the country.
I like John's formal introductions too when he introduces. He's
Yeah.
very formal. Imposter Rose, this is Tiger. Tiger, the Imposter Rose.
And this is Brian. You're welcome.
So, you guys lost me on that one. But I named it.
See, I'm in
and-
between. I can go either way.
I named the rose. We've mentioned that story several times. By the way, I want to take a moment to say hi to our buddy Hustam from Pakistan.
Yeah.
Dedicated viewer and listener.
When we were talking about with Melinda about pollinators, he was mentioning pollinating's going on over there. But it's their summer now.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. Well, we're getting
So
into
they're in the
summer
midst
too.
of-
Yeah, it's supposed to be our summer, but we're still having cool
Supposed to.
Yeah.
cool
Well,
weather.
like Tiger says, when July hits,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then we'll be complaining about the heat.
Yeah, it's right after June gloom. It's full steam ahead.
Yeah, full steam ahead. Okay, about 30 seconds to the break, and then one more segment after this.
That's all.
All right.
That's it. So let's
Wow.
take a break now. Let's take a break. One more segment coming up. Plenty of time for your questions, your comments, various rabbit holes we've gone down this morning. Having a good time here on Garden America. Happy Memorial Day weekend, too, by the way. Tiger Palafox, I'm Brian Main. John Bagnasco. We are back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. All right, we are back. Usually a little polite golf round of applause because we've hit the final segment. We're on the home stretch, the last furlong, John.
Back to Kevin, by the way.
Yeah, back
My
to
daughter Gina sent me a picture of a bouquet of peonies that she picked from her backyard, and I did not put it in the newsletter.
Oh yeah, she said her feelings were hurt, right?
Did she?
No,
Did
she
she really
didn't.
right now? I
No,
love
she
it.
didn't
I
say
love
her
it.
feelings were hurt, did
Well,
she?
they should be.
Oh.
I'm
Well, I'm
Gina,
just
they should
pointing
be.
Brian's putting words in her
pointing
mouth.
out to Kevin that my own daughter
Send a photo.
sent a photo and it didn't go
So
in.
basically what we're saying, it's come down to this. If John posts your picture in the newsletter, it's like winning the lottery. You know, balloons, confetti.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
we've been trying to think of ways to make more money for the company.
Yeah. You gotta pay to put your
Pay to play.
pay to play.
put photo
No,
in.
as they used to say, keep those cards and letters coming. We say keep those pictures coming.
Yeah. It's fun to see. Well,
Yeah, it is.
I was just thinking about when we were talking about all the photos and kind of funny photos that I think gardeners take, and we usually share flowers or plants, that people are proud of. But there's also, when you're in the garden and you're a gardener, there's also those kind of interesting photos you take, whether it's maybe a bug or a critter or maybe like a mushroom or fungus, because you're like, what is this happening here?
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
what's
Yeah.
growing. And, there's all kinds
I'm going to
of.
start doing that. I'm going to look for weird things and see
Yeah.
if John
There's-
likes it, strikes his fancy.
Yeah. There's, or even what's happening right now in my yard is all the freesia bulbs are starting to die off and, die. And the seed pods that are left on plants.
Go dormant, you mean?
Yeah, go dormant.
They're
Yeah,
not
that's
really
true. They're not
dying.
really dead. Yeah.
Right.
But seed pods, on plants, sometimes, A, they look nothing like the flower, and B, they can make some interesting shapes or
Right.
structures. I'm creating that video right now for the Asclepius, and we talked about that. Remember that Family Jewels Asclepius we saw
Yeah,
in
you
Costa
made me
Rica?
hold it. You made me grab it. Brian, come here. Grab onto this. I want to get a picture.
But there's all kinds of weird seed pods that happen on plants. That what was that? Do you know the botanical name of the sausage tree, John? You know which one I'm talking about?
Cagelia.
That it's a
What's it
massive
called?
tree.
Cagelia africana.
Huh. I wish I could remember
They
that.
make a beer out of it in Kenya.
They do?
Yeah.
They make beer out of that?
A beer.
A beer.
Yeah.
A beer.
Sausage beer.
But it looks like sausages.
Can you get
hanging-
me one of those? Because I had two of them when I lived on Pepper
What, the
Tree,
hanging sausages?
and they both died. Talking
Really?
about pollinators, those are pollinated by bats.
Are they bats?
Yeah, they are
That-
pollinated by
You know
bats.
where they had one of those? Do you remember that? What's that? In Fallbrook area. It was the place where we would go. Proven Winners had it. It's an event center. Like they have weddings and things.
The Grand Tradition?
The Grand Tradition.
Did
They
have
had one of those there.
Did they?
Yeah.
I don't know why mine died. They both died. They both got to be big trees. They flowered and had sausages. They look like a bunch of salamis
They
hanging
do.
on a tree.
It looks like you're in
like
one
an
of those
old deli.
Italian,
Like an Italian
like
deli.
an Italian deli where they're just hanging down.
Yeah.
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 But I want one, and I haven't been able to find
I think we've
one.
tiptoed around this majestically.
Yeah, exactly. It's so. Anyways, there's some really interesting things out there.
Now,
right?
John, years ago, too, was this you or Bruce? We did the macro photos
Oh yeah, where you zoom
I
in
used
real
to do
close.
those.
and
Zoom
try to-
in and people had to guess what it is.
It
And
was
we,
called,
we gave away a prize.
yeah, what's it or something like that.
Yeah.
You had to guess what the plant was.
I think that's cool. We should do it just for fun. Maybe I'll try to do it. I can get pretty close.
Yeah,
Can
if
you?
you want to do it, that's fine.
My
Yeah.
phone doesn't do close-ups real
Well, I've got
well.
a 14. What is yours?
I don't know.
Yeah. And even that's not the newest one.
Yeah.
No, you don't need a close up. You just need to take it at high res,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then you
zoom in.
Photoshop it.
Right. But still, like, I feel like mine's always go to fuzzy. Even if I take it at high res and then zoom in, I don't know. I'm probably doing something wrong.
Or you can just work on John's video then.
Yeah.
Stay in your
Okay.
comfort
Stay,
zone.
Stay,
You
stay in
your
my lane.
Stay in your
my
lane.
lane.
Exactly.
Well, you can. It's easy to do on PicMonkey, right?
You know what?
What?
I don't have a PicMonkey account anymore because I quit subscribing. I just wasn't using it. But for that first 2 years, when you turned me onto it, man, I was playing with pictures all the time.
Well, the company has one. You can just use the
I know
company one.
you have to. When we're off the air, I need the password and sign in.
Just give it to him now. See who else logs on.
Oh, exactly. Look at Kevin. I love the newsletter. I always read it and look forward to them. I
Oh,
think
now
you and-
he's being
you and-
nice.
You and Kevin have made up.
Sweet talking him.
This love affair now is blossoming again.
Yeah.
You know, Kevin's.
He's so funny.
You know, a lot of times our only relationship with listeners is through the radio show, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Facebook.
And it's so nice to get to meet people in person. You know, it was fun traveling with both Kevin and Terry
Yeah.
to Costa Rica. But, you know, now you have a different appreciation for someone because you actually know who
You know
they
them,
are
right. And
a
when
little
you,
bit
when you
about them.
Speak of them, and he's been that way ever since I've known him from junior high school.
I-
Great guy. I've always loved Kevin.
Well, we probably shouldn't mention it on the air unless you want to, but the story that he told about your high school streaking, I don't
Yeah,
think we would have ever known that because you never told us
We
about that.
We've got about a minute to go here. So basically, we were seniors in high school. It was the 70s, and we were talking about, hey, why don't we just take our gym clothes, we'll strip down naked, we'll run from the gym to the football field, and then dress there. We like, nah, better not. And the coaches caught wind of it. And they said, "Why, you guys chicken? You're going to chicken out?" We're
Well,
like,
the coaches pressured you, huh?
So we have we have the get go from the coaches. So we did, and we ran out there, and it was embarrassing for a couple of guys who fell and had to get up.
And you had a pro football player do that.
Who was that?
Didn't you have one of the guys on your team was a football player, right?
Well, there was a lot of guys out there. Anyway, so
Okay.
yes, we did that. We streaked, and a lot of guys didn't get dates after that, and that was the joke. Okay, we're gonna go. Thank you so much for putting up with this Memorial Day weekend, letting us go down a few rabbit holes. We love you all. Thank you so much. Those on Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we're gonna reconvene next week, right, guys?
Yep.
Back here, San Diego, California, iHeartMedia and Entertainment Studios. For the entire crew, I'm Brian Main, John Begnasker, Tiger Palafox. Thank you. Enjoy the weekend. We'll do it again next week here on Garden America.